Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, and Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on our authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Well, good morning again, or good afternoon, actually, where you're at. I'm Scott Rahn, author of the book of It. I was here yesterday, and I liked it so much I came back today. It seems mostly the most common question I get about the book of It is not really about its contents, but about what motivated me to write the book of It. And, well, that's kind of a strangely long story. I have a very much insatiable curiosity about things. I like learning things. I like just to read, obviously, from what's behind me. The entire concept of the book of It kind of came about by accident. I was not really setting out to be a writer. I had suffered a head trauma 20 years ago, and I was having memory problems, so I started writing things down so I wouldn't forget them or they wouldn't go away. And I ended up with a book of facts and reference points. I did think for a short time about publishing it, but it kind of read like a textbook. It would get boring in a big hurry to most people, even though what it deals into me is fascinating. So I came up with the concept of what became the book of It. The book of It, first off, the it in the book of It is just a name. It's something that some friends of mine that we had conversations about history, etc. We just came across this continuing strand that went through history, legend, everything. And we just started calling it It. That was because we couldn't find a reference point or a person or a beginning. And so when the time came to name it, I still didn't have a name. So in honor of my, I guess you'd say, co-conspirators, I just named it It. Formally, that's why it's called the Book of It. And the book itself, I settled on a format that would come out just short stories. All the short stories, however, although independent, connect to each other. So if you read the book cover to cover, you could read one chapter at a time, set it down, and well, some may not even finish it. It doesn't really matter to me. The concept being that you would go out and find things out for yourself, try and disprove what I said or what I wrote. And that's kind of how my friends and I did it. And the book itself, if you actually read it, sat it down, went back and read it again months later, there would be things, hopefully, that were stimulated in your mind, thoughts, or things you picked up later on in the book from the other stories that would make other things also very easy for you to realize that you may have missed the first time. It's in times, it's fictional stories and fables, somewhere, I guess you'd say. One chapter in particular is kind of critical. Another chapter is based in science and research. Among things I approached in there was what's now called climate change, long before anybody was talking about it. And, I approached, different morbid things we talked about. What would it really be like if the civilization went away? Just anything happened, be it an EMP, just collapse. And there's chapter deals with that. Like I said, it's rather morbid. It's not really. And there's basically all the way through it, it's the story of two competing self-disciplines. A self-discipline that wants to work for the whole, and a self-discipline that wants to work kind of for self-aggrandizement. And the way they've competed each other for dominance throughout history, I guess, and probably before, since I do believe there were other civilizations before recorded history. Good case in point, whoever built Samaria, which is supposed to be the oldest, already knew a whole lot about civil engineering. I mean, they put in sewers, they laid out the city on a grid, and plus they had to have the infrastructure knowledge to put the whole thing together, to feed crews, to outfit crews. Just tools alone required for such a job, let alone moving things or whatever technology was involved in moving blocks that weigh over 20 tons apiece. We can hardly do that today with our modern machinery. In fact, when I was first reading about it 20 some years ago, and blocks that make up the Sphinx temples that were taken away from the Sphinx, there was only 6 cranes on the planet could move that. Yet apparently they were able to move them, set them into place, and at the same time do it so precisely they were left with the body of the Sphinx when they were finished, and 2 temples sitting in front of it. The entire thing together, I said, became a manuscript that became the book of it. That book, well, hello, Dorothy Winters. I'm glad to see you too, I guess. Technically, I can't see you, but yeah, I'm glad you're here. The book is something that just flowed out, basically. It's pretty much written. I did some editing, not a lot. And I thought about leaving parts out that had just didn't like at the time. One of them I mentioned yesterday was a chapter called The Gargoyle, which is about a gargoyle sitting up and watching what goes on in the street below and what he's perceived, what he's seen. It's a very short chapter. Didn't like it when I wrote it, but it's kind of endearing to me now because of what it says. And there are chapters I've always liked, like one about a keeper of the sword who is actually from a period in history during the Inquisition, but it's a person unknown to history. I just know his basic description. Nobody knows who he was. And the person he's talking to is a young version of me who stumbled across him, in the case of the story, in a cave, because that's kind of a metaphor for how he was discovered, and a conversation with him. The catch being, because the story evolves, 20 years later, I find myself actually more that old knight and heretic than I do the young man now. I really today am not a full-time writer. I just wrote the book of it, and I still have a day job. I work as a commercial baker, as a matter of fact, for at least a few months before I retire. But I have never been a part-time writer. I've never published anything before in my life. And I'm actually enjoying the experience. And it was never set out to be profitable. I just wanted people to read what's in the book. So the fact that it is not profitable is not a huge surprise, and it doesn't hurt my feelings any. But the thing I wanted to do once I wrote it was share what we, there was 5 of us in the beginning, had done to, anybody that's interested. And as far as the book itself, you can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, through Ingram Distributors, any bookstore, your local bookstore can order it. And it's available on any online source. I prefer printed copies because I like liner notes. There's books behind me that on the cover plates, they're divided into different categories with all kinds of notes, listings of who different gods were and what they represented, who are about different customs and where to look them up, et cetera, et cetera. The tracking the story became, kind of an obsession for a while. Well, thanks, Melissa. I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's definitely a science fiction mystery. Like I said, I don't consider it fiction, but it's definitely a philosophical path. And I get what you're saying, because I've read a lot of science fiction. And I like that you compare me with the best. That's kind of good for my ego. And I'm glad you enjoy the book. I really am. It's kind of hard for me to say that I don't want everyone to pick it up and read it, because, every author wants that. You want success as an author, and you want what you've written. You want to share what you've written with everybody. It's not like I could sit in a lecture hall and tell everybody or read the book or whatever. So putting it down, and it does give it a weird form of immortality, as a friend of mine recently pointed out, that, now after I'm gone, somewhere there'll be a copy of it, hopefully, and somebody will pick it up maybe a long time from now and read it and see that there were people that were concerned, or there wasn't just the one type of person that gets remembered. Oh, okay. JM, the title is basically a description of the contents. I said earlier, the it, okay, is a strand that passes through history, philosophy, even legends. It's something that's nameless, technically. The guys and I that were working on it and bouncing ideas off each other a long time ago, we just started calling it because we didn't have a name for it. And when I wrote the book, I could have given the philosophy of the title that would have covered half the book cover, probably. It never occurred to me, but I just formally named the thing we called it. There's no like connection to the Stephen King it. There's no connection to IT. There's no connection to any of it. It's just this strand that's woven through what I call the tapestry of time and history. And hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, the book of it also is not like the book of it makes it sound kind of definitive. Like it began here and it goes to here and that's all of it. Well, that's not it at all. It's one of those mysteries in life where the more you learn, the more there is to learn. You never learn out of things that make you curious to look up and check out in all kinds of different things, from philosophy, even psychology, medicine, mathematics. There's a lot of weird stuff out there beyond the reality that we were taught in school. No, it's not a thriller. It's a set of just short stories. I don't know if it could be thrilling because it does deal with things like collapse of civilization and it goes into conspiracy theories, etc. And well, the main narrator, of course, is me. And my passage through things I've seen in life, I've had a really strange and adventurous life. I've done a lot of things, been a part of a lot of things, been associated with a lot of things in groups. And it's just the way it is in my world. And yeah, most of my jobs have been jobs other people will say, well, that's uninteresting. What, my life? That's another story. And so now as I get older, and I've been told even recently by a doctor, it's time to admit it, I'm not as young as I used to be, but that's also neither here nor there. Since my father skied till he was 80, I'm not really interested in looking at being old yet. And I can still keep up with younger people pretty well. But the book itself, it's hopefully interesting enough that people will go through it. There are parts that are disturbing enough and contrary to enough to what's mostly believed that a lot of people may well just sit it down and say, well, that's just crazy. Oh, the best experience I've had being a writer, well, the obvious one is I actually was accepted by, well, it's Page Publishing, but I was accepted by a publisher and my manuscript became a book. Okay, that's a great experience. And after doing this interview stuff 3 or 4 times, I find really it's a great experience. Like, for instance, talking to you right now, Keith. It's pretty high up on the list of things right now for me. Other than that, probably the experiences in life that came to put together a book of it, different adventures, different things done, things I've seen, things I've read, things I've studied. But overall, still the best experience is the idea that somebody saw my manuscript as good enough to publish. And that's got to be a highlight in every writer's world. And as I said, my book's not exactly written the way other books are written. It's written kind of like things were written in ancient Greece and back in those days, where they're narrations that tell a story that bring a lesson. Not necessarily a fable so much as one person talking to another, something that was set to be done kind of on a stage by traveling theater groups, minstrels, etc., in order to put forth to people that, well, at that time you would call illiterate, because they were. I don't want to say that about the common world today, because, well, you're not illiterate. You're mostly educated and smart enough, and hopefully open-minded enough to look at things from different angles, other than the ones that are thrown at you constantly in today's world by hundreds of forms of media, me right now being one of them. But the idea that maybe I might be able to change somebody's mind, maybe I might be able to change more than one person's mind. Nobody knows the effect one person has on others. Not really into science. Okay. This is going to take me a second. Margarina, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Okay. Let's try. Okay, everybody knows what's called the golden rule in the Christian world. Sorry about this, but something just fell in my eye. Okay, the golden rule, this is something I discovered through study, and you have to excuse the profile because it's the only way I can see my book. Zoroaster said, they don't know how long ago, but it may be as far back as 8,000 years ago. Be good, be kind, be humane, and charitable. Love your fellows, console the afflicted, pardon those who have done you wrong. Okay, Buddha and Confucius. Buddha said, in dealing with others, one should do as he would have done him. Confucius said, do not do to the others that which you would not they do to you. Jesus of Nazareth, of course, said, and it's called the golden rule, all things whatsoever that ye would that men do unto you, do you even unto them. Krishna. The true rule is to do by the things of others as you do by your own. Moses. Do only to another man what you would that he do unto you. And then there's, of course, Muhammad. Let none of you treat his brother in a way that he himself would dislike being treated. All of them, in all their separate philosophies, said the same thing. That's their one big law. And, well, it's one we still break today, obviously. But no one was ever excluded for any reason from being covered from that. And if you believe that, because I've had arguments on that, it comes from not knowing other parts of a religion. For instance, a Muslim religion right now, given what's given in the press, you might think they're very violent and very narrow-minded and closed off type of people. Yet at the same time, Muhammad actually wrote in the Quran that the quest for enlightenment is the quest for peace. He also wrote that people would have difference in religious preference, differences in societies, but they'd also have things in common. And all men should find what they have in common and strive to build on that. Jesus of Nazareth said several things like that, clear down to love thine enemies. See, it's just the philosophy across everything is the same. Like I said, I don't know if though I call it a conspiracy so much as a commonality, Alice. It's just, we seem habitually to be a tribal being, humans in general. And we tend to cut ourselves off from sources outside of that has our viewpoint or serves the existence of our tribe. And there's a lot more out there. I did say I dove into different conspiracy theories. For instance, one thing, a casual reader might brand me as anti-Semitic because I say a couple of things that sound very detrimental to the modern Jewish world. Well, that's not really what I mean. I'm just pointing out something. And for instance, knowing the history of something called the Protocols, I can't remember the exact title, sorry folks. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion in today's world was actually written centuries ago by a Frenchman, and it became anti-Zionist in Tsarist Russia when they were trying to deal with the Jewish immigration problem. Then they branded it as the way it's seen today, and the whole world came to accept that. But that's kind of what I was talking about when we say we tend to only judge or talk about things. Now, just because it's not a Zionist plot doesn't necessarily mean that what's contained in it isn't in fact a plan that's in use by somebody somewhere to take over the world. It's just, in fact, Nazi Germany, a lot of what they did was based on it. Okay, Melissa, it's not a space adventure mystery in any way, shape, or form. It's like I said, a book, very earthbound, crosses back through history and even into the world of legend, because there are things. An author once said that one civilization's history is the next civilization's legends, is the next civilization's romance stories. It's one of those things where if you take away certain things that may or may not have been added to stories or interpret them in a different way in your own mind, in the story of Pegasus, for instance, who's to say that there was the last flying machine of some sort? And over time, centuries of only having horses, Pegasus just became a flying horse. And that's because the audience could relate to that. You know, you can't get very far if you're a minstrel traveling town to town looking to eat, have some drink, and a place to sleep, if you're saying things people don't understand and you yourself don't understand, for that matter. But it's not a space mystery. However, I won't discount, because I don't know who the other Scott Rahn is. There's another Scott Rahn that's an author that may have wrote one. I'm just not familiar with it, with him. But no, my book is not a space adventure or anything like that. It's hopefully very soundly grounded in history and philosophy, enough so that people will see things, well, worth checking out, worth studying. And the Sorry, I was looking here. It in my book, Jay, is a nameless thing. It's something that friends of mine and I, when we were having conversations about things and we were discovering common things, it became what we just called this thread that passed through history, through philosophy, even back into legends, that I say thread because I call it a tapestry. This tapestry definitely contains something. We just were never able to find a beginning, a place to name it, a place where it began. And as such, we were totally unable to come up with a formal name. So when I wrote the book, because we just called it, it became its formal name. And it's the book of what we learned, or what I retained from what we learned more accurately, and what I made note of. And it still doesn't have a real name. It's just it. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to actually, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, I'm looking here and it looks like I am going over. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank people that are here. And I'd like to say that I'm going to be back at 3:30 Eastern time today for an interview. Yes, I will. I will, Helen. The concepts of the book of it, and well, there's actually still that boring textbook sounding thing that I wrote in the beginning when I was putting down what I knew. And there's a book, although fiction, it's a historical description of how in the 20th century the world changed. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, you know, what the manufacture of the Model T or the automobile in general changed in people's mobility and what it caused. 1920s, high school came around. 1950s, the first real teenagers. You know, all of this and how it changed the perception the world has of itself is actually a pretty interesting history. Now, as I started to say, I'm going to be back for an interview at 3:30 Eastern time today. Sorry. And then next week, I'm also going to be here Saturday, the 5th of November at 1 o'clock Eastern time for a half hour. And at 1:30 Eastern time the following day, Sunday the 6th, for another half hour. And I'd hope to see some of you then. I know I'm running over. And I'm hoping, like I said, to see some of you again. I'm hoping to see new faces. And I'm hoping you totally enjoyed. And it's time to say goodbye for now. And go on with, well, the space between now and then. According to a note I just got from Nikki, that my going over is not a problem. So I guess if somebody else has a question, I would be more than willing to take it. The book, like I said, I read the golden rules because she asked. I'm going to try and find something here real quick because this has always fascinated me. In fact, I once put it in a book show thing. No, that's not it. Okay, here we go. There's a Caliph of Baghdad, which Harun al-Rashid is his name. You don't know who he is, but you know his work. He's the guy that put together the Arabian Nights. He was talking to somebody, and he said, "My friend, more is concealed than is revealed. Each revealed leads to more concealed. Each concealed leads to undreamed of heights." And that's kind of sums up what I was talking about. You know, if you're curious enough, there's more than enough out there to learn. And I will now say goodbye and see you all later.